Spread out on the table here are more than 20 different cuts of meat, if you include the turkey and chicken. Now you'll notice that we have them grouped. If you learn to carve any one piece in each group, you can handle everything else in that group. You watch during rehearsals and you'll see what I mean. For instance, leg of lamb, whole ham, and the picnic shoulder are carved exactly alike. You'll see how most of these are carved during camera rehearsals and when we photograph them. The only real difference between carving a whole ham and carving either the butt or shank end cuts is that these are placed with the cut surface down. The actual cutting is the same. This group includes all steaks, and the only thing to remember about steaks is that when all bone is removed, care should be taken to cut each muscle into equal pieces so everyone will get a serving from each section where they vary in tenderness. And for these boneless cuts of meat, just make sure that all carving is done at right angles to the meat grain. That way, all servings are more tender and tasty. Any pot roast cut is the same once the bones are removed. The only thing to remember is that all cutting should be across the grain or fibers of the meat. Loin of pork and lamb ribs, sometimes called a rack of lamb, are carved exactly the same by cutting between the ribs. The standing rib roast is done differently but easily. If you turn it onto the cut surface with the rib bones to the left, then carve horizontally. And of course, the best possible example of this idea of learning to carve by meat groups is turkey and chicken, all poultry for that matter. Do you see how it works?
Well, it sure sounds easy the way you tell it. But turkey...
They give you trouble?
Trouble? I'll never forget the one I tried to carve for our first Thanksgiving dinner. A kid could have done better pulling it apart with his hands.
Well, you just watch what I do during rehearsals and when we make the pictures. You'll learn.
Well, I hope so.
One of the first shots they made was on carving a leg of lamb. Do you know that carving a leg of lamb is exactly the same as carving a whole ham? The first step is to cut off 3 or 4 slices from the side opposite the cushion. This can be located by the H-bone, the flat bone in the butt end which slants towards this meaty section. Now, cutting off these slices makes a flat surface for the roast to stand on while you're carving. Now, with the roast standing upright, you make sure the shank is to your right, if you're right-handed. A left-handed carver would put it the other way. Then you make a series of perpendicular cuts right down to the bone, using firm strokes with a sharp knife. And when you've got as many slices as you want, you lay your carving knife flat and cut along the leg bone at the bottom of your slices. You end up with a series of horseshoe-shaped slices just as neat and pretty as you could want. And this method of carving is the same for ham and lamb, for roast fresh ham, and roast leg of veal. Now, once you've learned to carve one, you've learned how to carve everything in the group. I guess we all learned something making that movie because Martha Logan even had to show the director how the different cuts went so he could figure his camera angles. In carving a ham butt piece, you place the half ham upright with the cut surface down. Make sure the bone end and the wedge-shaped bone is on your left. Then slice parallel to the platter, to the round bone. Cut several slices, and then make a vertical cut close to the round bone to free the slices. Well, really, it's the same as you do when you carve a whole ham, except that you're slicing horizontally instead of vertically. The shank piece is practically the same, except that it's easier to cut the meaty cushion free from the bone first, then slice it into as many servings as you want. The next group she showed us how to carve were the loin roasts. A roast loin of pork in this case. Carving is simply a matter of cutting between the ribs and serving the chop. The carving is easy if you have the backbone cut free when you buy the roast. You leave the backbone in place for roasting, then remove it before putting the roast on the platter. Lamb ribs are roasted and carved the same way, and a standing rib roast of beef also is the same, except you make your cuts horizontally instead of vertically. After that, she showed us how to carve a porterhouse.
You know, I think this part about steaks is just about the most interesting part of it all. You know, up until now, I never thought about steaks as being part of carving. I always thought you just cut it.
I know. That's what most people think. Here. But if you remember what I just showed you, always cut the bone out first with a short pointed knife. Then, holding the knife at an angle, cut the tenderloin, that's the smaller piece, into as many slices as there are people to be served. Then, cut the sirloin strip and the flank piece into the same number of slices. That way, all your servings will be the same. Everyone will be served equal amounts of each part of the steak. If you use this same principle for all steaks, you'll find that people will really enjoy having steak at your house.
Boy, is my wife going to be happy when she finds out I'm learning how to carve. What's next, Miss Logan?
Bone-in pot roast. We're going to demonstrate how to carve a blade bone pot roast first.
With a blade bone roast, the first step is to remove the bone, both the blade bone and the small piece of backbone. The next step is to separate the various muscles, or sections of meat, where they divide naturally. With the muscles separated, it's easy to see which way the grain runs in each section. And it's important to carve across the grain, turning the section, if necessary, to make it easy to get nice, even cross-grain slices. Since the part along the backbone is the most tender, always make sure everyone gets an equal portion of it. Carving round bone pot roast is about the same, except that you don't have to remove the one round bone out in the kitchen before you.
This method of grouping the various meat cuts is really quite simple. All that is required is an understanding of the similarity between different cuts of meat. For instance, people seldom think of ham and leg of lamb as being anything alike, yet methods for carving them are identical. Here, I'll show you. The first thing you do is to locate the wedge-shaped bone called the H-bone. Here it is on the leg of lamb, pointing toward the section from which the big horseshoe-shaped slices are cut. And here is the H-bone on the ham. With the shank bone to the right of the carver, first step in carving is to remove several slices from the side opposite the meaty section. This makes a flat surface for the roast to rest on while carving. With the fork placed in the butt end of the roast to hold it firm, start slicing at the shank end, cutting down to the bone with firm strokes. Slices should be at least 1/4 inch thick. When the desired number of slices has been cut, hold the knife parallel to the cutting board and cut along the leg bone to free the slices. And exactly the same method is used for roast leg of lamb. The standing rib roast of beef is really one of the easiest roasts to carve properly. Ribs to the left of the carver, the fork is inserted between the first and second ribs to hold the roast firmly. 1/4 inch slices are made from the right side of the roast across to the ribs. Remember to let a roast stand 15 minutes to let it firm up. It will carve more easily. As each slice is completed, use the tip of the knife to cut along the rib bone and free the slice. As cutting gets further into the roast, the fork should be removed from between the upper ribs and reinserted further down. In carving steaks, there is one point of paramount importance. After removing the bone, make sure that each part is cut into equal portions, so that each serving will be equal. For instance, here is a sirloin steak. With the bone removed, hold the knife blade at an angle and slice the steak into equal portions, about 3/4 inch thick, including as much of the tenderloin as possible with each serving. As long as you remember this, whether serving porterhouse, sirloin, ham steak, or even round steak, everyone at your house will be a happy steak eater. And now, to complete our demonstration, I'll show you some of the fine points for the carving job Father loves best. Turkey. The turkey should be placed so that the breast will be to the carver's left. With the tip of the knife, cut the strip of skin holding the legs in place. Now, press the drumstick outward with a fork or your left hand. Place the knife between the thigh and the body and slash through the skin to the joint. Keep that outward pressure constant while you're making this cut, and the entire leg will separate from the body. The upper thigh joint will come out so that you can cut it free with your knife. That was easy, wasn't it? So was this next cut, separating the thigh from the drumstick. You make your first cut in the angle between the two. Just press the edge of your knife in until you feel the joint. Now for the breast. Take your fork, put it firmly into the wing, and press it away from the body. With your knife, make a long cut just above the wing joint, cutting in all the way to the bone. When that cut is made, the breast is ready for carving. Start about halfway up the breast and slice straight down toward that cut above the wing joint. When your knife reaches the cut, the slices will fall free. Each succeeding slice of white meat is started higher on the breast until the crest of the bone is reached. You'll find with just a little practice, you'll acquire every bit of the skill of the expert. Happy carving and good eating.